Welcome, Baruch HaLevi, to the Wildflower Mystic.
Thank you. I love your podcast studio. I feel like it actually is mine too. So it's
I'm
nice.
so happy to have you.
It's nice to be on this side of the table as the guest.
Yes. So we've done a lot of podcasts together over the years. We've had a lot of iterations. And I think we've had a lot of iterations. We've been married for 26 years, right?
Is that a question? Or?
This is an ongoing. We've probably talked about this in our podcast before.
Right.
But okay, I digress. We've had a lot of iterations in our marriage, in our business as healer and coach, in the world, and in our inner world. And I think that as we get older and as we progress and we deepen, the biggest thing that I've found is that I think we're both asking, maybe in different ways, how do I become or open to, actually, it's not becoming, it's opening and remembering and returning to the deepest, most open-hearted part of myself. If I have this image of like a hawk or an eagle opening its wings fully, when you see a hawk or an eagle flying, to me at least, it's just complete awe of how vulnerable it must be. I mean, I know they're trained for this and they're made for that, but to just open their wings, it's the only way to fly, right?
Sounds like a commercial.
Wow, I just created a commercial. But it's the only way to fly, right? Is to open your wings fully. And so I'd like to talk today about, we do a little men, women kind of thing here, but also get a little personal of like what it means to fully open our wings and be heart-centered.
Wow, that's a powerful topic. Let's go.
We're going to dive right in. Go.
Excuse me.
So I'll ask you a question.
Please.
What is your experience of, I guess, living closed-hearted versus open-hearted, and how do you get there? How do you navigate the in-between?
So I think of my fist as really the embodiment of this. I'm all about actionable tools. How do you embody this? And literally the fist is the embodiment of it, because the knuckles are hard, they're protective, they can punch, they can defend. The palm is vulnerable, it's soft. And it's actually in the Talmud, it says every baby is born with fists clenched. We come into this world fighting. It's survival. From the moment you get here, it's like you're surviving. However, the Talmud ends up by saying every corpse dies with its hands open. There's no such thing as a corpse with its fists clenched. And the work is to learn how to open your hands before life opens them for you. And so that's my mic drop moment. I'm out of here.
Wow, that was so, I have nothing else to say.
But it's easy to say, but it's hard to do. It's the work of a lifetime. I've been clenched fists fighting my way for as far back as I can remember. Maybe there were periods of my childhood where I was living the palm side of my life, the softer side. But I shut that shit down real quick because I had to survive. And no, I didn't grow up in an abusive home. I had loving parents and, wasn't explicit. It was implicit. Mm-hmm. It wasn't safe. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, I've talked about it a lot. There were so many topics that were off the table where not only were you shushed, but you were shamed if you brought them up. My grandmother's depression, which ultimately led to her suicide, gay cousin, cancer, divorce, all these things off limits. So I just remember always feeling like on guard and really protecting myself. And that just then morphed into more sophisticated ways of protecting myself later on. And I've had to learn or unlearn that and how to open myself up.
I wonder also if, in the world of ancestral healing, we do a lot of looking backwards. And I think it gets mistaken for judgment. I know I've done it, right? Well, my parents were this way, my grandparents were this way. And I wonder if some of that closed fist, fighting, lack of vulnerability was, of course, their lack of knowledge. Like, we are who we are today because of, we stood on their shoulders. We had to. That's why we're here. But I wonder if it is looking backwards to all of our grandparents or great grandparents And I wonder if there's like, was anybody vulnerable? Was anybody open-hearted? Are we just the byproduct of our times? Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, look, I don't think we're all that special. I think every generation
You always say that.
has, I mean, because, I hear people talking about like, we're so enlightened. Like we're enlightened in some ways, in other ways we're not. And I think human beings come out with fists clenched to protect themselves. And it's not just my parents or, blame it on lineage. I mean, the playground. I write about this in my book. It was called 50 Different Names of Fat, right? And so that hardened me literally later on when I work out, became bodybuilder. It's protective, right? The world's a tough place. It isn't just ancestors or lineage. In some ways, the past were more enlightened when we had, there was a rally, as you know, in Boulder, Colorado, as we're recording this a few days ago. And they had snipers on the top of the building to protect the Jews from pogroms or riots or fire bombings or whatever the hell you want to call them. So, we still have to have our fists clenched, but I think the work is to know when to clench your fists and when to unclench your fists.
So let's talk a little bit about that practice of how do we do it differently? You and I, men and women. I mean, but I don't know if I want to go men and women the whole time, but like, how do we do that? The act of unclenching our fists before we are forced to, before we are corpses, right? I mean, I tend to think that the opening our palms to that soft part is like in Kabbalah practices, the fingers are the representative of the chakra system in Judaism, which is called the Sefirot. And every finger, when you open your palm, every finger has a divine message. And I've been reading about that and thinking about like these hands of wisdom, when you think about opening them, they are really representative of the heart, of like deepening into our heart. And so how can someone create that practice? What do you suggest?
Well, as you know, I work primarily, not exclusively, with men. And I do think there are differences. We don't have to get into it, but even in the way we come out, sperm and egg, men come out fighting for the one to win the race, to get to the egg first. So from the outset, we're fighting, right? And then we are asked as men to go off to the world, go off to war, go out and make a living. And that's all, hunter, warrior, hard side of your fist kind of stuff. And then we have to come home and find a way to flip the palm and be soft. And it takes work, it takes effort. So to me, that's the starting point. As a man, again, this is my area of expertise. I can't speak on behalf of women. To learn how to make that shift from fist to palm. And part of it is just committing to do that work, to committing to saying, like the first half of my life, I guess I had to power through it. But the second half of my life, I definitely need to start opening, become vulnerable, become softer. And we can get into 1,000 different ways. I have my ways that I've been working on, but I think it starts with an intention, with a consciousness, with a choice.
I think I like what you said also, because I think it is, it's not about blaming ourselves, because when we were 30, we were grinding and like doing the hard stuff, or, you have more energy when you're 20 than you do when you're 30 or when you're 40. And now that we're in our 50s and we kind of look into this, like, what does our life look like at 50? That it is a very divine, intentional time, that bridge between where we were and where we will be is that question of who do we want to be? How do we want to return to a deeper soul place? And I do think that it is, we do it in different ways. We're all different, but I do think it's a very intentional practice of, I think for a lot of women, at least, it's a nervous system. I feel that in some ways, many women live with their hands wide open, and then they get trampled on, right? So sure, come in. Everybody, come sit on my hands. And I think that's very different than like I have to go fight for my food.
Or giving birth is wearing your heart outside of yourself.
Oh, I mean, 100%, right?
I imagine. I haven't done it, but that's why I have a different relationship to our kids.
Right.
And I don't feel as vulnerable as you do.
Right. It's like someone said to me yesterday, a mom, when she gives birth, then lets some of her cells go and live outside of her body for the rest of her life. Right. And it is a very, it's an existential feeling of like those people who have to be completely resilient on their own and independent to be healthy humans. They have to separate from that umbilical cord connection and still connect. It's like a mind fuck, right? It's like, it's like I think for me, if I'm vulnerable, for the first part of my parenting and most of my 30s, definitely 40s, and now we're in our 50s, like it was like open-hearted. And in my 50s, what I realize is I can't just be open-hearted. I have to now it's training them to be resilient, and then opening my palm to myself. It's very confusing as a woman to be and live open-hearted, but also have really good boundaries around people.
Yeah, I mean, this conversation has taken a turn in a direction I didn't think we were going to go. It's interesting. We have like the celebration of open-heartedness and whatever that means, like compassion and just love and vulnerability. But I don't want my surgeon to be vulnerable. I don't want him to feel, oh my God, what if I lose this guy? Right? I don't want open-hearted. I want the fist. I want the surgical procedure. I want that distance, that health. I don't want our soldiers to be open-hearted, right? They'll get themselves killed and they won't protect us. And so how do you then come back and flip the switch, knowing when it's time for the fist and knowing when it's time for the palm is part of the work. Because I talk to some guys who live with too much palm open and they're getting stepped on, like you're saying,
right?
Walked on.
Right.
And then they tell themselves, but I'm a nice guy. But is that nice? I mean, is it really truly nice to allow yourself to be walked on when in fact what you wanted to do was clench your fist and say no?
Yeah. So I think I feel like there's a nuance here, right? So it's living enough palm open, but not so much that you lose yourself and get stepped on and walked on. Mm-hmm. And that's for men and women, right? But our suitcases that we've carried all these years, they tell us the story that the journey you've been on, you've been hurt, you've been this, you've had this, and now you need to close it because all those things, they hurt. And I think as we get older, we say to that journey, thank you so much. It's part of my path, right? It's my sole purpose to have gone through parents that got divorced, right? That I believe that. Did I choose it? I don't know. Like I would never say somebody chose rape. That's horrible, right? So I'm not about to go there. But for whatever reason, I went through, at age 13, which was so hard, my parents getting divorced. And there are lots of other things, right? And so I think the point is like, yeah, okay, thank you, journey. Thank you for the lesson. Thank you for the medicine. Right. And now I get to look into the next part of life. And how do we want to live open-hearted without getting stomped on, but like live as that hawk or that eagle?
Well, that's a really great point you're making that, even in our marriage in the early years, there was more of that little girl. My parents got divorced. I'm not going to get divorced, right? There was that reaction thing. Mm-hmm. And now you're like, no, I'm just kidding. Now you're like, it's not a fear, right? No, like we're grounded. And so it's a softer, more vulnerable side of you that doesn't have to be the 13-year-old girl to fight.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of it, is to tell ourselves a better story that just because I'm feeling that feeling doesn't mean it's true. Right. The woolly mammoth isn't chasing me on the Sahara 50 million years ago, even though my wiring is still built for that. But I'm actually okay. I'm safe.
Right.
I've seen it a lot lately with money. People are telling themselves like the market went down a little bit and they're doomed. And it's like, that's an old story. That feels like past baggage, yours or your parents or your grandparents. Like, is that still true? And is it causing you to show your fists when, in fact, you don't need to? You can be open-hearted here.
Yeah, I think we've done another podcast and we've done a lot of talking, so it all blends in. But I think we've done a lot of talking about, what, and I do this a lot with my work, is what part of me is feeling that little girl, that 13-year-old Amy that was like, oh my God.
Amy? Wait, what?
Oh, wait.
That's another podcast.
That's another podcast that I used to have another name and so did you. We won't go there. But that 13-year-old little girl or that 8-year-old little girl. And like, I think growing up and being an adult is an inside job, right? It's not about, oh my God, the market's bad. It's not about, are the kids going to be okay? Is my job okay? Whatever our audience is struggling with. It's an inside depth of, there are many facets to us. And living open-hearted means somewhere inside of you, there's an adult, higher self, whatever you want to call it, that knows that no matter what happens to her or him, they're okay. They're going to be okay. It's like, I don't know, maybe it's a 50+ thing. It's like somebody else is leading the charge. I mean, there's been a lot of work to get there. It's not every person just because you turn 50 or you're in your mid 50s, you get there. But there's kind of like this, wow, okay, little girl, I see you. And I see that how hurt you were. But if you drive in the car, we're going to crash. Right. And so I do think living open-hearted does mean not that little boy who grew up like this. He can soften because your higher self, it's like, it's okay. Like, I've got you.
And that's part of the work. I see it a lot in my work with men, of dealing with those triggers, shame, right? That's really what we go into, shame and just primal fear. I'm not taken care of, survival stuff.
Right.
And helping these men realize that they're just in, as Viktor Frankl calls it, reaction versus response. Reaction isn't a choice. It's animalistic. It's telling us we're not okay, so survive. But, these guys are beyond that. And the work is to really understand that we don't have to be triggered. Right? We don't have to go down this path of reaction. And then I do this and she does that and we're just spiraling downwards. We can break that pattern by really getting underneath it. And this is probably a good talking point for us, because so many guys go to, when they feel that shame or that vulnerability, they go to anger.
Right. Because
as a man in particular, anger is a hell of a lot easier for me to deal with than sadness or fear or shame.
Right. I think we've said before, these are like the 4 roots: anger, shame, guilt, and fear. Right. And those 4 roots, I've
never said that. That is you. And
I think we've discussed this before because I've brought it up.
Ariela.
I've brought this up to you many times. Do you not remember? This is now our thing. But I think these 4 roots are really the earthly, the stuff that we came here to learn. And if we can remember that we're not like the thing that you go to immediately. We could get on a whole discussion, like we always say with the Enneagram, right? But the thing that we go to is not necessarily our higher self, not at all. It's our wounded part reacting, because it's easier to react than feel that shame and that vulnerability.
Well, it's not a choice. It's just, your nervous system. It's that's why Viktor Frankl says between stimulus, shit happening, and response, there's a space. And what kind of space? Is it a small space where you just go into fight or flight, or can you learn how to expand the space? So you asking about vulnerability, and that's, to me, what we're talking about is how have we learned to expand the space so I don't have to live in reaction. I can choose my response. And that space is that vulnerability, that openness.
So let's talk about that space. So when it says like in that space, in between that space, am I making something up that says, I'll meet you there? Is there something that says, is that my little shamanic spiritual
beautiful
message?
And Viktor Frankl would agree with
I would not say that Viktor Frankl said that. I think it's a prayer.
Yeah, I mean, and it says like in the Torah, it says the children of Israel are supposed to build a mikdash, a sanctuary, b'shachanti b'tocham, and I will dwell within you.
Okay, so that's where,
Right, and it
yeah,
doesn't say it, because the divine doesn't dwell in brick and mortar, but tocham, and it's actually you plural, but it's
right.
you. I think that's really
Yeah,
cool.
so I'll meet you there. See, that's maybe it's an intuitive hit,
I think
but
it's a song too. I'll meet you there.
no,
Anyways.
it's not. Okay, so that liminal space, right? That space between the space
Yeah,
is very sacred.
and that's the work. That's the place of the work.
It is. But let's pause there. Okay, so we just talked about the space next to the liminal space, the pause. We were all around it. The roots of the shame and the guilt and the story, the backpack. If we pause and we come into that space where the divine truly meets you there, will dwell within you. So what does that mean to you?
That I'm not alone, right? I think that as a man is a big piece of it, especially with my abandonment issues, my father, all that bullshit, that I feel alone, right? Dropped off on a rock, whirling around a hot ball of fire, waiting to die. It's fucking scary. No roadmap out of here. But b'shachanti b'tocham, I will dwell within you. I'm not alone. And this is, why I'm a logotherapist, because Frankl says it's the divine power of the human spirit. It's this connection point to the noetic, to the spirit, source, whatever you want to call it. And then I don't feel so alone. And so I have different ways I can access that. But I actually have to work to access it. I don't just live in a state of connectedness. Some people do. It's amazing. I
Right.
never have been that guy. So I got to flip the palm, make the space. And, one of the ways I do it is sitting and meditating, paying attention to that space.
Mm-hmm.
That's a way. There's many others.
Yeah, I think it's cultivating that space. And I think it's not that I live there, but
You hang out there more than
I
I do.
hang out quite a bit there. I mean, not only with clients, of course, groups and clients, but with myself. I think every moment on this earth is a potential liminal space. Do I get there every day, all day? Of course not. But my goal, that is a goal, right? And so I think when we pause and we create the space and we take responsibility for the liminal space, I think that's part of our job as humans. I think the most magical experiences happen there.
Yeah.
And from that space, we open our heart.
And that's, what I do all day in my office. You're like, what is he doing there?
You're opening your heart?
I am, actually. I cry more in counseling men than I do in the rest of my life. I do.
Amazing.
I tear up. I expand the space. We expand the space. And then for some of these guys, it's the only time they've ever expanded the space, the only place they can think to expand the space.
Right.
Where we just open this up and the shame goes away and the judgments go away. And I hold the space for these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really transformative for them. But for me, to be able to facilitate that.
I think it's really beautiful to like women, all women want is for their partner to be open-hearted and be responsible, right? And I know a lot of women feel like they have to be very intensely wound up on their nervous system, right? Their nervous system is just wound. And I think to have a space where their person is doing their shame work, because I see it, having 2 boys, 2 girls. I think a lot of men feel deep shame, and they still, even though we're so enlightened today, hide it under a rock and they bury it so deeply. So when we're asking to have partners that we love and we can open our hearts to and feel safe with, I think what we're asking is to uncover, and I think we've talked about this before, to be that safe space is to be vulnerable in your shame.
And that's where, it says in the book of Proverbs, men sharpen men like iron sharpens iron, that men need other men to be able to fully do that so they can go home and do that with their partner. I've seen it in my work one-on-one with these guys in peer groups. that something happens when you have that strong masculine container of other men holding space for you so that you don't have to run away and do this work alone, because that's the natural inclination as a man. I just talked to a guy who had one of these vulnerable moments. He's overwhelmed by life, and he just went out to his car to cry because he didn't want anybody to see him. And I'm like, that's part of the challenge, right? Can we hold space as men for each other to come in and really open our hearts and protect that space? And sometimes it's protecting it, my brothers in my peer group protect the space from me because I'll move to shut it down.
Right.
I'll make a joke, or I'll trying to bypass it. And they really challenge me to stay in it. Don't run from it. And there's something just transformative about men holding space for other men.
I think it's so important, like what you're saying, as, think about my grandfather, right? Like he's been gone for 30 years and, owned a business and did well. But there were so many things unsaid because, number one, he went golfing, right?
Like poker and
right.
all these other
Like
things.
He didn't have that language. He tried. When my parents got divorced, he tried to sit me down, and I was like, this is not what you're supposed to do. Right? This is uncomfortable. But quite honestly, he's done quite a bit for me in the liminal world post death. He's a different man. He is the vulnerable, open-hearted man that I always wanted my grandfather to be, although he was wonderful. And I just think that, when you think about like where we came from and where, like what you're doing for men to help them have to grow into midlife and beyond with a space where we can cry versus being at your deathbed and either bottling it up even then or just having so much shame come up, it's such a hard thing. And it's so beautiful to have those sacred spaces for men.
Yeah, and more than the tears sort of point the way towards vulnerability. It's to be in a group of guys where, we're not competing, which is a revelation for guys because, again, since we were sperm, we've been competing to win the prize.
Yeah.
And then there's this space where it's not a competition, and learning how to be vulnerable in that space has been transformative to me. One of the most transformative things was doing drugs with these guys, plant medicine. I know.
You're just out of pocket.
We went and did psilocybin and MDMA and a couple other things as a part of a retreat, but it wasn't just like escape. That wasn't it at all. We spent a month getting ready together, doing similar stuff, not together, meditating and journaling and clean eating. And then we had this beautiful ceremony and men's group, and we did the plant medicine, and then on the other side the integration, and we were checking in. And that was a revelation for me too, because you can, as a man, learn how to open the door, and find the right lock to the right key, or you can just kick the fucker down with plant medicine. And it was like, oh my God, why haven't I been more vulnerable?
Oh my God.
It was
I have
amazing.
seen the biggest change in you in the last, what was it, 2 months ago, maybe? I saw the doors kicked down.
Yeah, the kids call me Teddy Bear Dad now.
Yeah, he's proud of it.
Yeah, they don't mean it, but still.
No, but I think what they're saying is you're not the same person you were when you were 30, when you were 35, 40, right? And I think both of us have learned to soften. I've always been soft, but in a way of like, we never know what people are going through in their inner worlds. And to me, I've been not soft inside.
You were presenting as soft.
I was the yoga teacher, right? Everyone used to say to me like, "You're so calm, you're so that," and it was the opposite. I was just not showing you what was inside. And I think I can get there easier than you, but I think plant medicine is a beautiful way for people to get there. We won't go into deep plant medicine talk here, but I think that the purpose of it is to spend time between the space.
Yeah, anybody who's doing plant medicine and think you're going to, recreation to
run
leave,
from that space,
you're doing the wrong thing. Like, go
Right.
get drunk, go get high. This is taking you into the space so you can figure out why it's so fucking crowded in this space.
Yeah.
And there's no room in here, and I got to get ghosts out of here, and I got to get the shame out of here, and I got to
right?
open the space. I would not recommend this for somebody who wants to escape their life. This is only for somebody who wants to learn how to truly expand the space. And as a man too, I just needed help getting past. I needed a tool. I needed something to help push me past the block.
Right.
No matter, I've been doing meditation. I've been doing journaling for a quarter of a century.
Yeah.
And one plant medicine journey did more for me than 25 years of journaling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying don't journal, but man, if something works, do that.
Yeah. And not all of us need plant medicine to do that, but I do.
This is like the warning label on the, you're going to say it really fast.
Coming back to our intention of open-heartedness.
I'm being totally open-hearted right now.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I think it's so funny. In all the podcasts we've done, you always say something completely out of pocket, and then I get flustered and I laugh because you make me laugh.
It's a talent.
I know. You've been sharpening that for years.
That's why you're still so attracted to me. Should we have this conversation on air?
Okay. So coming back to open-hearted.
Do you want to take over because you're flustered?
No, I do not. No. Coming back to being open-hearted, I think like as we kind of conclude here, I think we all have a space between the space, that liminal space where the divine will meet us, where our hearts are a portal. They're a doorway. They're a doorway to the divine. They're a doorway to the deeper parts of ourselves. And most people don't want to go there because the doorway to the divine sometimes can be really pretty and neat and cool. But ultimately, the divine is going to point downwards and say, go in here. Right? Like I spent years going up here and pretty much the divine was like, okay, now go down here again. And so the process is a beautiful unfolding and we all need support and we all need, like you do men's groups, I do women's groups. And I think the purpose of this lifetime here is to not do it alone, is to be vulnerable with our people.
So we recently went to a cocktail party, as you know, and, it was people who have succeeded in life by every outward measure. But this is true when we were, Rabbi and Rebbetzin. I mean, we've been to many of these cocktail parties. People listening have been to them. And it was just surface level bullshit. And we just, both of us sat there until we made ourselves vulnerable. You had a conversation with somebody and you said, here's the truth. And you just kind of said it. And I felt you go into you. And then I was talking to the guy. He said, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a men's coach. He's like, tell me about that. I'm like, well, telling about it. I said, the first question I asked the guy is, why haven't you killed yourself? This was at a cocktail party. And I thought either he's going to run, he's going to go to the bar, or we're going to go deep. And we went deep. Right. He's like, my best friend killed himself and all this. I said, this isn't a conversation about killing ourselves. This is why we're living. Right. What's your why, man? And we talked the rest of the time about, like, what's this guy's why? And I guess that's my point. Life is short, and you get to the second half, and it's real short, and you don't know. And people say to me all the time, I'm 50 years old, and I'm on halfway through life. I'm like, you might be farther than that. Right. Like, the clock is ticking. So what are you going to do with this precious time? Right. And are you going to go into that space and just mine it for meaning? Now or never.
Absolutely. And honestly, those cocktail parties are put there to make a decision.
Yeah, although we're not going to get too many more invites if we keep doing what I did, but still.
No, but I mean, I really believe those cocktail parties, those things that look superficial, the question is like, which road do you want to go on, right? The second I stood in what I do and I went deep and I told a woman that, my grandfather came to me when my grandmother died and like all these stories about my dead grandfather and how he was really truly my guide in helping like me uncover my deeper meaning in life and purpose. And I could tell I just lost her in one of my conversations. But the point was, it's like, it didn't care. Because I was vulnerable and I was open-hearted and I could go away and walk away and say, oh my God, how could I say I connect deeply with my dead grandfather? He's been gone for 30 years.
A shame hangover.
Shame hangover instead of drinking. And for me, it was like, yes, do more, right? More authentic you, more raw, more real, do more of that. And like, okay, bring on the cocktail parties.
I don't think our phone's going to be ringing off the hook anytime soon.
Well, they also stopped years ago when we left the Rabbi Rebbitzin world.
That's true. Because we didn't have to do it anymore. And that's part of the point.
Yeah.
Is we didn't want to have to wear the mask anymore.
Yeah. I mean, that's really why we left that world.
Yeah. I couldn't be vulnerable. I couldn't,
No.
It was not a safe space to say, this is who I am and what I'm feeling.
Yeah. And for me, it was it was beautiful for what it was, but a lot of it was the superficial, the outward. Yeah.
But the point is that you get to the second half of life. I imagine that's your audience on this podcast. It's my audience. And you don't have to do that anymore.
Right.
You get to write the rules of how I'm going to play this game.
Yeah.
And my new rule is I am not going out of this lifetime with people saying, but what did he really feel? Who was he really?
Right. And I'm not sure that's going to be an issue.
But I don't want my kids or anybody to say we couldn't get to his heart, right? Because that to me has been the issue.
Right.
As I've protected my heart, not realizing I'm doing it, but leading with the knuckles and not the palm.
Yeah.
And now I'm really ready to live palm wide open, be the eagle flying, whatever.
There you go. There you go.
That's when Yovel's going to play the music.
Okay, so to conclude, I think my prayer for everyone listening and for the two of us and everyone is that truly, like really, what is it that you're hiding behind, right? And how can you take off that mask to let more of your heart fly and be free? And whatever visual that you get, mine is the hawk or the eagle, yours is the open fist, right? The palm, the softer part of us. And my prayer is that we all find it, whether you're 20 and you're listening to this, or you're 75 or 85 and everything, it doesn't matter what age you are. Take this message and ask yourself, where and how do I get to that liminal space where the divine will meet us inside of us and go from there?
Yeah, and I would just end by saying, especially to the men, you know what this gets you, but you probably don't know what this gets you. And don't leave this world without trying this first.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.